Monday. So Monday was a lecture with a little bit of playing. This is going to be a lot of playing and a little bit of lecturing. So you got your fill of Schoenberg, so today I'm not going to play just Schoenberg, I'm going to play all kinds of other stuff. What? Yeah. Okay. I love that. Okay. So you have a program, right? And in the program you have a text at the end, which is part of an excerpt of an essay that Schoenberg wrote in 1931. Of course, he wrote it in German, and it was translated by, now I forget the first name, I think his last name was Reich, so a German guy in the 1940s in the United States after they all had to emigrate because of the Nazis. So some of the English is a little bit, let's say, peculiar, let's put it that way. But what I figured I'd do is explain a little bit about what Schoenberg took away from these composers who he considered as his teachers. Schoenberg had basically no formal training in music, or almost none, not until he was in his 20s. And even then it was very sporadic. But he had, and I mentioned that in my lecture on Monday, he had an uncanny ability to analyze music by other composers and basically take from their styles and their musical language what he needed for his own development and his own expression. So he says, my teachers are primarily Bach, Mozart, and secondarily Beethoven, Brahms, and Wagner. So from Bach, he said, I learned contrapuntal thinking, that is, the art of inventing musical figures that can be used to accompany themselves. Whatever that exactly means, I would need to look at the German text. The art of producing everything from one thing and of relating figures by transformation. Those are the two things I want to focus on with the fugue that I'm going to play, the B-flat major fugue. So, it starts out, you all know what a fugue is? So fugue is a contrapuntal piece with several voices or parts, can be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In this case, it's a 3-part fugue. So imagine you have 3 different instruments playing it, a flute, a violin, and a cello, for example, but I have to do all this on the piano. And the whole thing starts out with the top voice, let's say the flute, playing the fugal theme, and the theme goes like this. Then the second voice comes in, and the first voice continues with the so-called counter subject. Second voice has the counterpoint, think that is a sequence, a varied sequence, you would be correct. So, this is the second element of the counter subject. Let's turn this around to this, and do this, and turn that around. Then you have, does that sound familiar? Of course it does. So this is another variant of this. Now, we can vary backwards. So now we have the variant before the variant. Does that make sense? And then we've got repeated notes. So again, everything that is in the counter subject can be traced back to. Now, when the second theme, I promise I won't talk about every piece that long, but this is important. The second theme, when it comes in, it doesn't do this. It does this. So when a second theme comes in the fugue, you can have two different kinds of what they call answers. You can have a tonal answer or a real answer. In this case, we have a tonal answer, because if it did this, that would just sound ugly. So he adapts the beginning of that. Instead of a second back down, he goes up a third and then back down. So why is this important? Because when the third voice comes in with the theme, and the second voice has, the very first voice plays this. Look, we had the third. Now we have the third. And this is just parallel to the theme. So this third theme, so to speak, or the second counter subject if you want, also traces back directly to the beginning of the fugue theme. Now, is that remarkable? Yes, it is. The other thing that's remarkable is that basically nothing in this piece cannot be traced to this beginning, because these three themes come all the time in different combinations. So sometimes the main theme, the fugal theme, is on top, the first counter subject in the middle, and then the second counter subject on the bottom. Or he switches around, or he mixes it, which basically makes it what's called a triple counterpoint. If you have three voices and you can stack them any way you want, it's called a triple counterpoint. If you've ever tried to write just a double counterpoint, one voice and another voice with the same theme, you know how incredibly difficult this is. And this is, it sounds like child play, because for Bach it was child play. Anyway, so when Schoenberg talks about that you transform themes and can get everything out of, that's exactly what he means. And there's a German term for that, which is called Substanzgemeinschaft. Basically, community of substance. That means that the substance of every motive and every theme that is in this piece can be traced back to one thing. So everything is the variant of the same. Okay? So now I will play this fugue, and the fugue would not be complete if you don't play the prelude, so I'm going to play the prelude as well. Mozart. From Mozart he learned inequality of phrase length, coordination of heterogeneous, is that right? Did I say that right? Thank you. Heterogeneous characters to form a thematic unity. Deviation from even number construction in the theme and its component parts, and so on. So, the Rondo in A minor by Mozart, Köchel 511, is a relatively late piece, 1787, so 4 years before he passed away, so he was 31 years old when he composed that, by no means an old man. But, let me play with the theme of this rondo. You all know what a rondo is? Heterogeneous thematic material that he turns into one big theme. So this is basically a so-called Siciliano rhythm. This dotted, 6/8 dotted rhythm is from the Italian dance called Siciliano. This is with this. Right. Then he has this kind of expressive chromaticism. And then he has a little ending formula. So very heterogeneous material that he turns into one thematic idea. It's very typical for Mozart. The other thing is that you have this, which is one measure. Then you have a two-measure phrase. Another one-measure phrase. So unevenness of phrasing within this thematic material. So this is something very typical but of Mozart, and this is one of the elements that Schoenberg took out of Mozart's musical language and used for himself. Now, there are many more things I could say about this, but I have promised that I would play more and not talk as much, so that's it. come to Beethoven. Also good to note. So from Beethoven, Schoenberg learned the art of developing themes and movements, the art of variation and of varying, the multifariousness, that's a cool word, of the ways in which long movements can be built, the art of being shamelessly long or heartlessly brief as the situation demands. Those are the main things I want to talk about. So, I'm playing the first movement of the Sonata Opus 10 number 1 in C minor by Beethoven. The famous C minor sonata is the Partitik, right? Okay. If the Partitik is a double espresso, this Opus 10 number 1 is a quadruple ristretto. Does anybody know what a ristretto is? A ristretto is an espresso with only half the water. So, the Partitik is already very passionate. This one is explosive. And it is very compact. And Beethoven does not waste any time anywhere. So, this is the main theme here. On the other hand, when he comes into the development, I'm not going to play that right now, there he expands as much as he wants, and it's very lyrical and it's very expensive, and then he comes back to the compactness. So he has both in here. I'm going to say one more thing. Triad. Then psi figure. The second theme, which is very different in character, triad, psi figure. So completely different character, but still related through the motivic material. Very similar to what Bach does. Okay, so here we go. Sonata Opus 10 number 1 by a Mr. Ludwig van Beethoven. Monty Python was something completely different. We jump about 50 years ahead to Richard Wagner, a composer who is not necessarily my favorite, basically because he was a massive asshole. But he was he was rather brilliant and probably a genius. The opera Tristan and Isolde probably had a greater effect on the development of the harmonic language in the second half of the 19th century than any other piece. And the famous Tristan chord, so I'm going to play you the beginning of, well, let me read what Mr. Schoenberg writes, I know you have there. The way it is possible to manipulate themes for expressive purposes, and the art of formulating them in the way that will serve this end. It's a little bit strange English. Relatedness of tones and chords, the possibility of regarding themes and motives as if they were complex ornaments so that they can be used against harmonies in a dissonant way. Sort of understand what it means. Anyway, so if you know anything about Wagner, you know about the concept of leitmotif. So a leitmotif is a melody, a motive that is in some way, shape, or form, represents something, either a person or an action or a thought. And for example, this very beginning here is the so-called longing motif. Somebody's always longing. And then on top here you will hear the desire motif that goes up. Then we have the expansion of that. It's the so-called hero motif. And then you have the glance motif. Glances play a big, big role. Right? And then you have the drink of atonement. The whole thing revolves around two lovers that are not supposed to be in love with each other, and somebody tries to get other people to fall in love and tries to give them love potions, but they end up giving it to Tristan and Isolde, which are the wrong people to get them, but they fall madly in love and everybody gets really angry. And then at some point everybody calms down and says, no, they belong together, but by that time they're both dead. So it's very tragic. This is the drink of atonement. You're going to cry, I promise. It's really, really moving, and it's beautiful, beautiful music. Anyway, so I'm going to play the prelude of this opera in a piano version by Otto Singer, who was a composer himself, but who was mainly remembered by doing really wonderful transcription of mainly Wagner and Richard Strauss opera scores for piano. And what was so revolutionary about this introduction is that so you have a very dissonant chord, a tritone, a major third and a fourth on top. Resolve that, however you want to resolve that. There are many ways of resolving it, but you certainly don't resolve it into another dissonant chord, which is exactly what Wagner does here. And then he lets everybody wait. And then he does it again. So it's not just the resolution of a dissonant chord into another dissonant chord, but also the rests in between that let people just go, where the heck am I? And for many parts in this prelude, you have no idea what key you're in. And in 1853, that was very, very unusual. Usually you have key, and then you modulate and do all kinds of things, but you have key. Right? It's not atonal music, it's very tonal music. And you have key centers, but the key centers shift all the time. And they shift so quickly and so strangely that very often you just don't know where you are. And a lot of the regular, 1 to 5 relationships are substituted by third relationships, major third, minor third, tritone relationships. So it's extremely progressive considering that this was composed in the middle of the 19th century. The other thing that's really interesting is that the whole introduction ends on a half cadence. So it ends on the dominant. All of a sudden, we are somehow landed in some form of C major, and the thing ends like this. And the resolution of this half cadence happens 3 hours later at the end of the opera. Right? So this is extremely unusual at the time, and had, like I said, had more influence on the development and the destruction of tonality than any other piece in the 19th century. So here we go. Apart from that, it's just glorious music. that comes 2.5 hours of angst and love sickness and love potions and dead lovers. Brahms. Much of what I had unconsciously absorbed from Mozart, particularly odd barring, extension, aggregation of phrases, plasticity, can you say that, in molding figures, not to be mean, not to stint myself when clarity demands more space, to carry every figure through to the end. Systematic notation, economy, yet richness. I will not talk much about Brahms because we're kind of running out of time. So I'm just going to play this. This is the last of the intermezzi opus, the first one of the 4 piano pieces, opus 119. One of my absolute favorites. technicality in the Brahms, that is the pieces in B minor, but there is no B minor chord until the very, very last chord. Okay, so now we go to the master himself, not the other strong masters. So, several pieces by Arnold Schoenberg. The first one is a very early piece, written when he was 20. Remember, he had no formal training, so this is all made by himself. And there are some oddities in his writing that are very interesting, but again, we're running out of time, so I'm going to talk much about it. Except that it's very tricky to play because he was not a pianist. He had no idea what to do on the piano, so it's not comfortable. It sounds very Brahmsian, so here we go. Associate with Schoenberg when you hear what's coming up now. So this is Opus 11, number 2. If you were there on Monday, you heard parts of it. So the next few pieces, don't worry, we're not going to be here for much longer. The 6 little piano pieces together are about 4 minutes, and the intermezzo is another 3. So we should be out of here by 7:45 at the latest. These are the 6 little piano pieces, die 6 kleine Klavierstücke by Schoenberg. Freely atonal, quite a bit more chromatic than the piece I just played. It almost sounds already like 12-tone music, but it's not. technology that we had 113 years ago. This music is still very, very modern. Now I'm going to play the intermezzo from the Suite Opus 25, which is a strict 12-tone piece. Whereas the other movements are indeed dance movements. There's a jig, there's a minuet, there's a musette, there's a prelude is dancey. This intermezzo is very different. And I love this piece very much. You have maybe seen, there is a piece of art that moves everyone who sees it. It's a machine that dances, and it loses fluid as it does so. And while it dances, it sops up the fluid to get it back into itself, right? And it becomes more and more frantic as it realizes that the fluid is actually, it's losing it, and at the end, it is paralyzed and dies. It's a machine, and you go, this is terrible. That's this piece. I'm sorry to end with this. If you want, I can play something a little happier at the end. But to me, this is just despondently moving. It's a very interesting, very atonal, very 12-tone language. But I hope you enjoy it, or like it. I hope you're moved. There we go. most difficult music came at the very end when you're really tired. So that was, I don't know whether that was with design. No, it wasn't. But you were a wonderful audience. Thank you again for coming, and I hope you enjoyed that. And I might do something similar, maybe with a different composer at some point, where I do a lecture and then something. Okay, thanks very much.